Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is Lord Zath bringing you another replay for Zath's Replay Theater. In this battle, we are looking at Anumati in a Shokaku. That's right, we're gonna take on aircraft carriers. This will be the first replay submitted with an aircraft carrier. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. Taking a look at the lineup here, it's a tier 10 battle with tier 8 carriers. Oh, do I hate seeing that when I play mine. We have Division with Hotel AQT, North Carolina, and Geisho Shoku in a Kid. Both very strong anti-airships. You'd almost think that you'd expect that as well. And as you can see here, we have some communication within the division. Most likely they are scoping out the enemy team, trying to figure out who's a threat, who's not. This is something that I'll commonly do as well. I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to try... Can I do this? I think so. I'm going to try to get back over by the carrier. I need to take a couple of quick screenshots for potentially our title slide. And as you can see, as we go in, this is Tears of the Desert, which is, oh boy, sometimes it's, well, I think a lot of you guys know, it's nicknamed Tears of the Players, possibly for a good reason. So as we close in on the Shokaku here, my goal is to get a screenshot of plane taking off, and here we go. Look at that, perfect. And a little bit farther, a little bit farther. What I can do, by the way, if you don't know this, you can hit the home key and the end key to freeze time and continue. Ooh. Anumati showing off the Supremacy League Season 3 Gold Champion flag. It's a very rare flag, as only Team SF3 contains it. Only members from that team, I should say. And as you can see, I don't fully pause the time. I'm able to kind of slow it down, but things still happen just very slowly. So you have to be good at kind of gauging when you want to do your screenshots and that sort of thing. For those who don't know, I do the screenshots on the World of Warships wiki, so that's kind of how that started with that. And I love carriers, I love aircraft, so for me this is fun. For you, maybe not so much, and I apologize for that. We'll get back into the action very briefly here. Alright, so now the question is, are there others lined up? Nope. It's kind of one of those fun angles, right, where you can kind of see the carrier, you can see all the planes on it, and you can see the one that's taking off. So let's go kind of this. Oh no, my cat wants on my lap. Apologize if you hear any meowing. Alright, let's go a little bit farther. Like that. Yeah, that looks good, huh? Yeah. Alright. One final thing that we could try doing. I've never done this before. That looks kind of nice. That looks kind of cool, huh? Maybe that'll be my picture. I gotta remember that next time I do more screenshots for the wiki. Can also do that, but that kind of... Maybe if I go this way, yes. 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 Okay. So let's go back to what's going on right now. And one of the things that I like to do is comment on flags. So I see Juliet Whiskey Uninone, which does torpedo or flooding damage with torpedo bombers. I see, I don't remember what it's called, November Echo Set 7 maybe, the one that does 10% damage per second to anti-air. And then I see both flags that add to fires. And camo looks like Type 5 camouflage, which is decreases detectability and increases dispersion on shots fired at it. Alright, so let's go back into the battle here, and we're following Anumati's perspective. And so the whole idea here is we're gonna learn how to play carrier. and I'm going to try to comment. Now, Anumati is a very strong carrier player. I guess you would say he's a carrier main. He plays carrier for Warship Supremacy League, and he is very good at dropping destroyers, as I can attest, as he killed me in a previous battle. Anyway, Z46 is going to take a tort, most likely. Very good. Destroyers tend to like to go really slow when they smoke, and if you're not careful, you'll get nailed quite easily. The Z52 did not reverse. That was interesting. You could see that first torpedo hit. You kind of expect him to drop on him, and the gearing takes a hit as well. Gearing possibly has defensive fire, so that's a concern, something to consider. I'm going to pause for a second, and let's pull up the minimap, and let's talk a little bit about aircraft carriers, because they play very differently from every other class. So, every aircraft carrier has two main roles, right? One is to damage the enemy. That's kind of a duh. The other role, I guess you could say, is, well, three main roles. The other main role is going to be to help defend your team, maybe possibly from other carrier drops. The third role, this one is often very much overlooked, is to provide vision for your team, to give them an idea of who's going where so they can properly set up fleet movements, coordinate attacks, that sort of thing. Now let's take a look at the minimap here. This is important. The first thing that Anumati did was go right into B cap, because he wanted to know what's there. You can see that his team's Shimakaze is on the cap, and by doing this he is supporting that Shima. There are two destroyers. Now the Shima knows this is not a good situation to be in, so he's most likely going to flee and run away, which is fine. What it means is that Shimakaze knows this now. Had that Shimakaze not been given that information, that Shima might have sat there in B thinking, okay, there's probably a destroyer somewhere, right? And then guess what? Two destroyers probably would have popped up on him, and he would have gotten focused, possibly killed by these guys back here that are supporting. Okay? That's an important thing to note. I'm going to shrink this down so it doesn't get in the way from my markers. The other thing to keep in mind is, let's take a look at the rest of the board, right? So we've got five ships that are at A versus Khabarovsk, North Carolina, and Montana. So really, the A side should win this flank. Should. We have four ships at C. Anumati's division mates are here. There's an Akizuki that is contesting C, or was, possibly, maybe gone now, and two battleships that are supporting that Akizuki. So, both sides, both flanks are very strong. What that means is that there's a large core of ships that are going to be in B cap. So the question becomes, where are they moving to, and what are they going to do? And this is why carriers are so powerful, because Anumati has the ability to find that out for the team much earlier than they would have normally found out, right? So if the enemy team goes into B, then both flanks are going to be able to, assuming they win their side, push in around and kind of pincer move in. That's important. All right, so I know I just kind of went over an awful lot here for carrier players. One other thing I want to talk about briefly has to do with the ship itself. So the Shokaku is quite possibly the best Tier 8 aircraft carrier. Why? Because it has a nice balanced loadout of 2 fighters, 2 torpedo bombers, and 2 dive bombers. As you can see here, 2, okay? I just said 2 4 times anyway. And the nice thing about that is it's a good mixture of strike damage, it's a good mixture of spotting, and it's also a good mixture of air control. Remember all those 3 roles I just said about carriers? The Shokaku can do each of these equally well. That's important. The Enterprise that Anumati is up against, the Enterprise has also a 2 loadout. 2 fighters, 2 dive bombers, and 2 torpedo bombers. Some differences: the Enterprise's dive bombers could be armor piercing. and their torpedo bomber spread is very different from Anumati's Shokaku torpedo bombers. However, the torpedo bombers and dive bombers are lower tier. I believe they're tier 7, which means that they are weaker than the tier 8 counterparts. The fighters themselves are definitely weaker than the Shokakus. That being said, look at the Enterprise's reserve, 96 planes versus 72 from the Shokaku. So that means that the Enterprise can afford to lose a lot more planes and keep fighting. So that's something to keep in mind. They have a lot of the ship has a lot of fighters, so you can look to see some of that coming into play soon. All right, let's continue the battle and see what's going on. Again, we're resuming play from Anumati's perspective. I'm going to bring that mini-map back down to standard size. And once again, see, the Shimakaze has left BCAP. They've gotten that information. That's important. And BCAP will probably fall to the enemy. That is okay. It's not worth losing a ship at the start of the match over a capture point. It is much more valuable to save your health points for a time when you can decisively do some damage. We saw Anumati down at A cap for a sec, scouting, trying to figure out what's going on with that Cabras. Aircraft are so useful at spotting torpedoes that are fired outside of the smoke. So that is a huge advantage for the team. Now we see Anumati's carrier itself is moving. This is something else that a lot of carrier players don't do properly. They turn their carrier into a floating airfield, and that is it. Anumati is constantly moving around and trying to figure out where the enemy carrier's strike is going, which as you can see is at sea. We're about to see a strafe coming in from Group 3. He's trying to save or help his div mate, and his div mate is probably doing fine. Now, this gearing, again, I said earlier, I think he has the ability to load defensive fire. Did he run defensive fire? I don't know. We'll have to see. And there's an Akizuki there. Akizuki, also very strong anti-air, if spec'd properly for it. Anumati is dropping torpedoes on the Akizuki. Gonna get one, maybe two torpedoes. Yes, he gets it. He knew that was coming, so he switches over to the Z-46. And this is something that a lot of destroyers just aren't accustomed to, as you can see. They're not used to having an enemy aircraft carrier driver that is really good at dropping torpedoes on them. You'll notice that he didn't try to do a cross drop. He didn't try to do like a get them in a torpedo trap, which is what a lot of carrier players do. He watched them and looked for the most opportune time to drop. And there's Gaishu Shoku getting the kill with his kid. Perfect. So now look at this. The enemy team is down 2 destroyers, 1 cruiser, 1 battleship. Whereas Anumati's team is down 1 cruiser and 1 battleship. That's a nice trade. And there it is. Look at that torpedo spotting right there. Now his team, Anumati's team, knows that those torpedoes are coming. And that's coming right towards, I believe, Gaishu Shoku. Those noises you are hearing, that's Anumati changing his manual drop. He's changing his manual drop position and angle based on what he sees the gearing is doing. I do this a lot too, and it's kind of frustrating because sometimes when I do that, the bombers will go derp and nope, and then they'll circle around back and drop again. And of course by that time the target's moved, and it becomes very frustrating and very challenging to try to put things together. Now we haven't seen much from the Enterprise. Again, unfortunately, the chances are that the Enterprise on the enemy team is not a very good player. Aircraft carriers right now are very difficult to play and to master, and as a result, it's very common. Oh, torpedo. That's probably going to be from the. That's got to be from the gearing. Oops. Like I was saying, nice. I just so the issue with carriers is that it's very difficult to learn the class, get really good at it, and as a result, it's very common that you end up with very one-sided engagements, like this one, where you've got one really good carrier player versus someone who probably isn't. And that makes it, I mean, a huge advantage, of course, for Anumati and his team, and a severe disadvantage for the enemy team. If you notice, Anumati isn't really even using his fighters right now. I mean, he's telling them to go attack things, and scout, but that's about it. He hasn't. Now he's moving him in. Okay, he's moving them in now to try to help the Yamato, but it's too late to help him with the dive bombers. Maybe he can help him with the torpedo bombers. Hopefully you can see, with all of this movement, just how hectic plane carriers can be. You have to be very good at moving around the map, keeping an eye on what's going on. Alright, Group 2 is not doing anything. Anumati is focusing more on damage and trying to injure the enemy versus trying to defend his team. Remember, I told you there's 3 roles. It's very hard to do all 3 of those roles evenly, and I would almost argue that if you try to do all 3 roles at once, you're not going to do any of them properly. That's the hardest part of playing carrier, is you kind of need to decide what role you want to do. And I think that's why a lot of people like to play the air superiority flight control modules of USN and Japanese aircraft carriers, because it puts the emphasis on one method, right? Defend the fleet. Damage comes secondary, so it's defend the fleet, then scout, then damage. Good carrier players oftentimes prefer a more balanced idea, so each of them are about the same. But there's also good players that do strike. Personally, that's my favorite. I like to play strike on Lexington and others, and so for me it's more damage, scouting, and then defend the fleet. Oh. Trade there. Regardless of how you play it, every battle is a little bit different because you don't know what the enemy carrier is going to be. Could be Enterprise, could be Graf Zeppelin, could be Shokaku, could be Lexington. There's quite a bit of Tier 8 carriers out there, and because of mirrored matchmaking, you know you're going up against any one of those 4 possibilities. And then you add within that the fact that some carriers have different flight control modules, and it makes things a little bit different. You saw Anumati there, moving in and basically prepared to follow up with his torpedo bombers if needed to get that kill. And people are congratulating on a good game. The Enterprise, bad positioning. Look at where Anumati is, right? He's halfway now in the map. He's putting himself in a position so that his planes can return to him quickly, and he can get his planes back into the battle much quicker too. That's important. If he was all the way back up, where's my cursor? If he was all the way up over here, it would take twice as long for his planes to be effective. So that's something to consider as a carrier player. Now he's going after the Montana to the last easy target, so to speak, because it does not have defensive fire, but it's got very strong anti-air. You can see that even though the Montana's at nearly half health, it still has an awful lot of anti-air at its disposal. And that Montana is doing a wonderful job of defending himself. He's turning away from the carriers, from the torpedo bombers, and he's basically targeting the other one that had his broadside. It's very smart gameplay on his side. And now we see the dive bombers coming in. Personally, one thing I probably would have done differently is I would have dropped the dive bombers first, because if you look at that, you just took out 4 anti-air guns. So drop the dive bombers first, then bring the torpedo bombers in. That decreases the DPS, damage per second, that the Montana is putting out against your torpedo bombers. It's honestly a small tweak. And, you know, I personally, when I play this, I also like to lead with my torpedo bombers as well. So we're going to slow down this game for a second and basically say thanks for watching. Anumati, phenomenal job. I appreciate you sending me this replay. It's a great opportunity for a lot of people to see what a good aircraft carrier can do in terms of positioning, in terms of scouting and finding the enemy, in terms of supporting the team, getting kills on destroyers early. You notice how much that decided the battle, right? When they didn't have destroyers, they lost their vision, they lost their ability to screen for torpedoes, they lost their ability to smoke up their themselves and their buddies and contest caps, and it was a complete steamroll from there. Good carriers kill destroyers. If you're not good at killing destroyers, practice this skill. If you want to be a good player, a good carrier driver, learn to manual drop, learn to manual drop destroyers, and get really good at killing them. If you can do that, then you have a lot going in your favor. Also, notice how Anumati is divisioned with two strong players who are bringing strong anti-air ships. That's also very helpful. If you're going to division with somebody, think about what you're coming with, what you're bringing to the table, and think about how you can support other members in your division. I think that's really important too. We saw some really good communication as well. The team clearly jived together well, and ultimately we see the win pulled out. Look at Anumati's damage. It's only 48,000. But look at this. He got 2 kills, one of which was a dev strike. He's shot down a few planes, right? This battle was won partly through his ability to scout. And that's unnoticeable here. There's no ribbons for that, right? So we can't quantify easily through this replay his value. But hopefully, as you watch the battle unfold, you kind of saw how his scouting really changed things. Versus the Enterprise, all the Enterprise did was drop his bombers right up into sea several times. So, once again, thanks Anumati for sharing, and if anybody else has any comments, please, as always, leave a comment on the video or something. Let me know what you think of the battle. If you like the video, go ahead and like and subscribe if you want. Hey, it's always fun. And I highly encourage any of you, send me your replays. You know, if you're just learning carrier and want my perspective, I'm very happy to help you out. So with that, we're gonna press play here. We're gonna watch the Montana die, I think, and that's gonna be game. So there we go. Oh, there. Thanks for watching, everyone.